You're with Julian on the Brown Note and a review of The Electric State. I think the subject matter of the rest of the show is heavy enough to not dive back into anything too heavy. So, a review of The Electric State. Anthony and Joseph Russo have become associated with the late stage of MCU. So they made some very well received lower budget stuff. Welcome to Collingwood, You, Me and Dupree. And then they moved on to Winter Soldier, which was a high point to this day of the entire MCU world. And their track record on MCU films is pretty astonishingly good. Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War and Endgame. Pretty stellar run, as good as probably any director in the MCU world. Since then, it's been a bit of like they've produced films like 21 Bridges, which was pretty bad. Extraction was good, and Extraction 2 was good. There were only producers there. But they did show a paradigm, I thought, with Everything Everywhere All at Once. They produced an A24 film. Yes, that's great. Let them do that. But they made their own film as directors, and it was The Grey Man, which is pretty awful and also obnoxiously expensive. And now they've come back with The Electric State, which is getting hammered by critics, particularly as this Netflix original that didn't even get released in cinema cost $320 million. One of the most expensive films of all time, and no, you cannot tell. That would be, in cinema terms, a break-even point of over $600 million. So Netflix is certainly paying through the nose for these two. I assume that they're coming back for the next wave of rehashes that the MCU are doing. The plot is quite convoluted. We have a future where robots do everything for us. They become sentient and get annoyed and want to be treated better. And then we have a war between us and the robots. Then the Stanley Tucci, calling him Mark Strong, his character Ethan Skate, who's an Elon Musk-ish guy, develops a way for human beings to put on a mask and control other robots who then win the war. So we live in a society that's beyond that war, where robots are now shoved into places like a wasteland where they can all live together, or they're all killed, and if any are found in human environments, they're whacked and so on. And human beings have become these incredibly, a little bit like the film Wall-E, where they're just basically, they put their mask on and they live a different life somewhere else and just vegetate and grow fat. So you can live a life of someone else through your robot. Millie Bobby Brown is the lead girl. She lives with, great to see George Costanza in the house. Jason Alexander is her stepdad or foster dad. And she's come from a family where her brother was a mathematical genius, and her brother and her parents were killed in a car accident. And she's been going through bouncing from foster parents to foster parents. And then this robot comes along out of the junk in the garage and says, I'm your brother. Basically, the same technology that's used now where a human can put on their headpiece and then they can be in this robot somewhere else. He's like a forerunner of that. His part of his psyche, not the whole thing, but part of his psyche is in this robot. And she sets off on a mission across America to try and find her real brother, who's apparently still alive somewhere, didn't die in the car crash. And along the way, she forms a bond with Chris Pratt, who's wandering around making money, being a bit of a con man. Someone said, like, the film is basically Millie Bobby Brown being a bit like her Stranger Things character, and Chris Pratt being a bit like his Star-Lord character in Guardians of the Galaxy, 100%. Absolutely 100%. Now, it has got absolutely trash 15% on Rotten Tomatoes, I think. And it's not. It's 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's down there with Madame Web. I gave Madame Web a 0 out of 10. It's nowhere near in that league. The best summation I can say about this film is there was undoubtedly the best Transformers movie was Bumblebee. This is like a remake of Bumblebee with everything in it worse. I mean, even like, I've seen people saying maybe Millie Bobby Brown is suited to television, as the few times that she's actually been a lead in a movie hasn't worked. She is no Haley Steinfeld replacement at all. Even the visuals of the robots and everything isn't anywhere near the level of that Transformers movie. Everything is a lower level. The emotion, the story, the way you're connecting with anything that's happening. It's a pretty rum thing, but it isn't terrible. How they spent this much money, I don't know. It like, an actual positive is the fact that it does feel like an 80s movie, and it does remind me of the robot film Shortcut, which is a positive. But it's not a positive if you're saying you spent how much money to make it look like this. Some of it looks good. I wouldn't say much. There's a couple of really good musical moments in this film. So again, Bumblebee wipes the floor with it. Danzig's Mother comes out of nowhere. That track Mother is outstanding. I wish I could see the soundtrack, because there was a couple of really good songs that I just didn't expect to see. Yeah, it's not on there. There was another really hard rocking song, and I was like, wow, that's really elevated what I'm watching. And the story itself isn't bad. It's actually convoluted, and it's from a comic book which is very acclaimed. Illustrated novel by Simon Stullenhag, and it's been crucified for how much it actually abuses the source material, doesn't follow it, leaves stuff out, and so on. I thought the whole thing with her brother was reasonable. It was enough to float the movie on. There's no good acting much in this film from the main players, but we do get... I thought Stanley Tucci was very good as the evil industrialist genius. I thought that some of the voices of the robots was actually really good. I think it's Ki Hu Kwan. One of the robot that hangs around with Chris Pratt, I thought was really cool and well voiced. And Giancarlo Esposito, the legend, is another one of these humans that puts on a robot face, but he's a cop that chases them and so on. And Holly Hunter is just completely wasted. Oh no, it's Anthony Mackie as Herman. That's the one I was talking about. It's quite weird that some of the robots have been in advertising. So we get Mr. Peanut, played by Woody Harrelson. And Brian Cox as well, Hank Azaria. Some good voice actors for the robots. Yeah, well, it's Anthony Mackie's military robot I thought was really quite cool and a standout. And some of the robot design is pretty decent. Other times it's kind of odd. You definitely wouldn't say this is one of the most expensive films ever made. But honestly, The Electric State, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's perfectly passable home entertainment.